This is the SnS Grill's 22-inch charcoal grill and smoker, MasterKettle. I've been using this for a while now, so I figured I'd share some thoughts. This is a 22-inch charcoal kettle mounted on a 4-leg cart. It comes with a side table, a lower storage rack, a stainless steel cooking grate, and the slow-end sear insert. That insert holds the charcoal on one side and has a water reservoir next to it. It creates a direct cooking area over the coals and an indirect area on the other side. Setup took me less than an hour, but one part slowed me down. The bottom vent rod and ash sweep lever were awkward to line up. I had to hold several pieces in place while applying more force than I expected. The instructions were clear enough. It was just a fiddly part of the assembly. Once I got through that section, the rest was pretty simple. The cart feels stable during normal use. I like having 4 legs instead of the usual 3-leg kettle setup. The grill does not shift around much when I rotate the grate or move food. The wheels make it easy enough to reposition, although this is not something I would want to move across rough ground very often. The side table has been more useful than I expected. It gives me enough room for a tray, seasoning, gloves, and a thermometer. On a basic kettle, I usually end up using a separate folding table. Here, I can keep the things I need close to the cooking surface. There is also a rack underneath, which works for charcoal tools and other items that I do not mind storing low to the ground. The stainless steel grate is one of the parts one notice every time I cook. It feels heavier than the plated grates I have used on less expensive kettles. It rotates smoothly around the bowl, so I can move food from the hot side to the cooler side without picking up each piece. I use that a lot with chicken, burgers, and thicker steaks. There is also a hinged section in the grate. I can open it and add charcoal without removing the food or lifting out the entire grate. That sounds like a small detail, but it is handy during a longer cook. For smoking, I fill the slow-end sear with charcoal and light a small section at one end. I add hot water to the reservoir, put the food on the opposite side, and adjust the airflow. Mine usually gets close to 225 degrees within about 30 minutes. Once it settles, it stays fairly steady as long as I do not keep opening the lid. The separate smoke hole near the bottom makes low temperature control easier. I close the main lower vents and use that smaller opening to control the air. It gives me a finer adjustment than the wide bottom vents alone. I still check the temperature with a digital probe, but I do not have to make constant changes. There is a silicone port for probe wires, so I do not need to pinch them under the lid. I was concerned that this might feel loose or let a lot of air escape, but it has worked normally for me. The lid thermometer is useful for a quick check, though I still trust a probe near the food when temperature accuracy matters. I have held the grill near 225 degrees for most of a day on one load of charcoal. Weather makes a difference, of course. Wind and cold can change how much fuel it uses. The lid holder helps a little with crosswind because it sits along the side of the kettle, but I still need to pay attention when the weather is rough. For direct cooking, I load the charcoal insert and let the coals get fully lit. The heat is concentrated in a smaller area than it would be with charcoal spread across the entire grate. That gives me a strong searing zone. I can brown a steak over the coals and then rotate the grate or move the steak to the indirect side to finish. I did not measure the direct side at the claimed maximum temperature, but it gets hot enough for the kind of searing I normally do. I also like that I am not using a full kettle of charcoal just to cook a few steaks or pork chops. The 22-inch cooking area is familiar if I compare it with a standard Weber kettle. There is enough room for a pork shoulder, a spatchcock chicken, or several pounds of wings. The indirect side is wide enough that I do not feel like the food is sitting right against the coals. The larger charcoal grate moves the coal basket closer to the edge, which leaves a little more separation between the two cooking zones. I have cooked a pork but around 7 pounds without feeling crowded. A whole chicken also fits easily with room around it for airflow. Wings take more grate management because I like to keep them in the indirect area and move them over the heat near the end. The rotating grate makes that easier. The lid cradle is another practical touch. I can slide the lid into it instead of placing it on the ground or trying to hang it from the bowl. It keeps the hot lid out of the way and makes checking the food less awkward. Cleanup is mostly straightforward. The stainless steel sweep pushes loose ash into the bucket underneath. The bucket comes off without much trouble and is easy to empty. The sweep blades are sturdy, but they do not reach all the way to the outer edge of the bowl. Some ash stays around the perimeter, so I usually brush that toward the center by hand after the grill has cooled. That is the main issue I have noticed during regular use. The ash system works, but it does not clear everything on its own. The bucket also fits a little more loosely than the one on some Weber kettles I have used. I have not had it fall off, and the loose fit makes removal easy, but it does not feel as tight. Some of the smaller trim details are also less tidy than what I have seen on long-established kettle models. Nothing has affected cooking, but it is worth mentioning if neat fit and finish matter a lot to you. Before using it, I wondered whether the extra parts would make charcoal cooking more complicated. In practice, the opposite has been true for me. I have one clear area for charcoal, one area for indirect heat, and a small intake opening for smoking. I still need to learn how the grill reacts to wind, fuel, and vent changes, but the basic routine is easy to repeat. Compared with a standard kettle, this gives me a more complete setup without needing a separate table, charcoal basket, probe port, or lid holder. Compared with an offset smoker, it needs less fuel and takes up less space. An offset still offers more cooking capacity and a different fire management experience, so this does not replace one for everyone. I think this makes sense for someone who wants one charcoal grill for regular grilling and longer smoking sessions. It is also useful for someone who likes kettle cooking but does not want to add several separate parts later. If I only cooked burgers a few times each summer, a simpler kettle would probably be enough. My experience has been positive, with a few practical complaints. Temperature control has been steady, the grate is easy to work with, and the side table gets used during every cook. The assembly around the lower vent could be easier, and the ash sweep leaves some cleanup behind. I would recommend considering it if two-zone charcoal cooking and smoking are both things you plan to do regularly. Just keep the assembly issue and the extra ash cleanup in mind. If you have any questions about the MasterKettle or want me to test something specific, leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more straightforward product reviews and cooking tests. Thank you for watching.